We answer them live right here on Facebook. Well, I've got not a pre-submitted question, but something that is near and dear to my heart. And the question I'm going to ask you before we dive in is, have you created a budget for this year and a Google sheet or an Excel sheet to test your formulas and your projections from last year? And then have you taken that budget, financial budget, and put it into QuickBooks online or desktop? It is astounding and actually just shocking at this point how many businesses do not have an actual budget that they check weekly, daily, and quarterly. And I'm not here standing on a pedestal because trust me, in the early years, I fell victim. I ran the business by the seat of my pants. I didn't have a budget and I didn't track things daily. If there was cash in the bank, we assumed we were making money, but that is not the case. And it was not the case after my divorce when I started running the business by the bank account balance. But before then, that interesting area, we had run the business through a QuickBook budget and implemented accountability and actually what's tracked, what's happened. So what I'm going to be doing is going in on a very high level and showing you step by step what I highly recommend. If you haven't done it before or you haven't done it yet this year, we need to go create a financial budget and we need to put it into QuickBooks. And then we're going to dive into some projections as far as client lifetime value, how many new clients per marketing source, and what do we need to project into this year with the uncertainty of the world and all the chaos going on. So without any further delay, I'm going to open up the screen, but I'm going to urge you, if you're watching this live and you don't have time to watch the whole thing, come back to this. It's going to be live on the SimpleGrowth page amongst some other Facebook groups. Comments or questions, drop them below. But we're diving in today, how to set up a financial budget for your service business, how to take that budget, put it into QuickBooks online or desktop, and then how to create some assumptions going forward. So here we go. And if this is something of interest, I'm actually toying with the idea of creating a mini masterminds group limited to maybe 10 or 15 people where we actually set this all up together and held accountability throughout the season to make sure you're actually tracking what you should track for success. So if that's of interest, drop me a PM. But the idea here is I want to drop this open and show you how we build a budget and how to actually hold yourself accountable to make sure you're making money day in and day out with a budget. This is completely platform software independent. Doesn't matter if you have a software or not. We can build this in an Excel sheet or Google sheet like I'm showing you here. Ideally, we want to take this and put it into QuickBooks and have your budget, your finances, and everything else in QuickBooks. Most businesses that we work with, and it's hundreds a year, do not have a budget inside QuickBooks. Highly, highly recommended. It is liberating and empowering. So without any further delay, what we've got here is literally what we've gone into is QuickBooks and downloaded a profit and loss statement from last year in an accrual basis. Now, I don't have any numbers in here because this is a fictitious setup. I'm going to show you some numbers, how this drives in here. But ideally, as you download this, you would have your chart of accounts here across the left, as far as our sales, all the way into our cost of goods sold, our COGS, and our gross profit. And then you would have your expense counts. I'm going to dive into this. All the way at the bottom is going to be your net profit. But you want to pull this out of QuickBooks if you or your accountant's using it, because this is your actual chart of accounts. You don't want to copy this fictitious one I've set up here. But as you see the spacing and the way they've come out, kind of pulled out to the left and right, this is literally a QuickBooks budget that has been downloaded out of a QuickBooks account. So what we're going to be doing here is going in, and if we have our historical data, we're going in and adjusting month after month the projected income for, let's just say, aeration, cleanup, fertilization, lawn mowing. In some cases, I feel like this example is probably a little too granular, but you probably want at least your big divisions of, say, maintenance, lawn care, design, build, and maybe snow removal. Talk to your accountant to see what kind of granularity you want. Otherwise, you can actually have some of that granularity tucked behind, say, a maintenance account, and you can see the granularity. So too much detail can hurt you, in my opinion, looking at this. And in the early days, we went way too granular. So as we're building this budget, before we get into QuickBooks, I suggest kind of modeling it after your chart of accounts. But this may cause a conversation between you and your financial advisor because the accountant talks taxes. The business owner here is going to be talking how we actually run this business in the real world and how it affects our day-to-day operations and how we can track it. So one-time versus reoccurring revenue. So what we're going to do is plug in some numbers here for our income, and then that's going to subtotal here. You can see we've got a formula where that adds that up. Now, most of these formulas, depending how you download this out of QuickBooks, will actually come over intact. And I've updated these here, but that is another good reason why you want to pull that out of QuickBooks and get that exact chart of accounts. Now we're going in our cost of goods sold, our materials. We may break it down per division, especially if you're doing maintenance and design build. Those are definitely two big different things in your budget. And it's going to be based off those projections. So you may say, Mike, I'm just starting out, or these numbers here potentially that would have filled in out of QuickBooks, I could raise them as a percentage across the board. I want to grow my aeration by 30%. I want to grow my lawn mowing by 50%. A great way to do it is going in and really pulling the reports out of your CRMs. This is an example that we pulled out of Service Autopilot, but all CRMs that I'm aware of pretty much have this data here. So what we've got is our sales source by summary. So the number of new leads, converted leads, conversion ratio, that closing rate, and the number of open leads and total leads. But if I can look at a company-wide idea here, we've got new leads and converted leads. So we had 1,800 leads and we've converted 485. So that's a good benchmark as we're driving back to our budget, because now based on our overall conversion ratio, if we're at a certain amount, we say we want to grow by 30%, then we can use that to back some math in. And then we're going to get this all in the QuickBooks here in a minute. But I want to kind of give you some foundational understanding of once we have the data that should automatically populate in QuickBooks here, we go back and pull these data reports, and then we do it by lead source summary. So now if you were doing customer referrals or 9-arounds or different advertisements, you know per marketing source what your average conversion ratio is. So you start to spread that across, and now we're going to start backing into the individual services. But these are non-emotional numbers. A lot of people come up to us and say, hey, Mike, I want to break $1 million this year and I'm at $500,000. Well, that's great, but what's your plan? If we don't have a plan to get there, we can't get there. So we want to, as we start to build this budget here that's going into QuickBooks, we want to have some foundational numbers that actually support it, and historically we'll back it up. So this is something you don't want to rush into, but we want to be able to build out. Once again, I am considering maybe getting 10 to 15 people throughout a 12-month commitment to actually build a budget, hold accountability, marketing plan, budget, amongst some other things, daily and weekly KPIs. So if that's something you're interested, drop me a message. But I really want to show you how we build this out here. So the next thing I'm looking at here usually is our company's scorecard and cancellation report. So based on those things, not only are we looking at growing in the budget, the new numbers that are coming in, so taking our base numbers that would be here, multiplying that up and creating that plan, but we want to take a look how much attrition or cancellation we're going to have. Based on your market, you may be losing 10% of your client base that you can't control. They're literally just moving out of your market. So we need to attribute that. So we want our new clients, canceled clients, and then our net new. And then we're backing that into a budgeted number of sales based on the average ticket value and how many transactions goes out. So if it's a fertilization, if it's a 5-step package or a 6-step package, or perimeter pest, maybe there's 4 or 5 rounds of that. We need to back those numbers in here without emotion to make sure that works. So the last thing we're doing here is going in and creating a marketing plan. So this marketing plan is probably going to be done in conjunction with the budget. Now, this is about the budget, but if you're building a budget, we should have some things built in. So if we're looking at Google AdWords, and traditionally we close 35%, and we've increased that by 20%. If everything stays the same, we should produce 720 leads and 250 new sales. So if the average cost of the marketing is $18,720, that would give us an average client acquisition cost of $74.29. And based on the average ticket value of that service that we get from there, we generate $878. So now that's that number we can non-emotionally back into that particular area in the budget, back in the Excel sheet here, Google sheet, before we pull it in the QuickBooks. So I'm just laying down the foundational pieces of how we back these numbers in and have an accurate budget in QuickBooks. Now, the next thing is we're going to set some sales goals. So now that we've got it in our Excel sheet here, and I'm going to show you how we get this in the QuickBooks in a minute. Now that we have it, how do we track it? Well, we can track it when the sales happen and we go out to mow those lawns or do those aerations. But if it's front loaded in the lawn care season, where your marketing season's happening in February or March, or maybe even January, depending on your area, we need to be able to track the actual, how many sales do we need to get and where are we at? And are we going to have enough of those sales to get in and make that budget happen? So we can go in and say lawn mowing, this year's actuals, last year's actuals, difference from the year, and what's the goal? What's the goal difference? What's that average sales total? Is it matching what we projected? And how many more do we need to hit that goal so our budget actually works out? Because if we don't hit the goals in the beginning of the year, we may have to go back in and dial back that budget. Now, we really want to set it and forget it as far as that. But if we don't hit our goals in the spring season, once those sales are gone, they're gone. So we want to make sure we at least dial that budget back so it's accurate and it's obtainable. And then we want weekly sales goal tracking. So each day we go in and how many more accounts are needed on average based on the average lifetime ticket value to hit that goal. So now we've kind of brought all of this together and we've got these foundational pieces. So we're going to take that data and go in and say, okay, maybe we've got $50,000. And obviously you need to spread this per month, but I'm just going to give you some really rough examples here. So we've got another 100,000 in cleanup, fertilization, maybe we're doing $500,000, and we've got 750 in the mowing. So you get the idea. We're starting to drive those numbers, but these numbers here, we're not just going to plug in non-emotionally. We're going to go back into the historical data and basically figure out our closing ratios per area, our cancellation report, and then cancellation reasons. So some of these they're just moving. We can't save them. Maybe they're a customer service issue. We can address those and make those better. And then we're creating our marketing plan up here and dialing that all in. And as we're building that marketing plan across the board, we are projecting cash flow requirements for that marketing plan. And once again, as we're building that budget here, we're going to scroll down to our marketing area for advertising and plug those numbers in based on cash flow projections throughout the 12 months. Now, sometimes lawn care can be seasonal as far as your advertising. It's front end loaded. So you may have more cash flow up front instead of overall 12 months. Now, if you're out in Arizona in different areas like that, or down south in Florida, your marketing spend may be pretty standard across all 12 months. You know your market. But the idea is we want to build foundational understanding. We build all of and once again, all these numbers would come in, our expenses from our QuickBooks, and then we're going to project up based on our growth and inflation and other factors. So as we scroll down, then we should have our profit and our net profit expenses. So we've got our total profit here, and we've got our net income here. So obviously, we haven't put any real numbers in here. We wouldn't want to see a negative number, but we've got that number. So we want to build this out month per month. And once you have this template and you agree with it and it looks good, we're taking these numbers and literally copying, pasting, or transferring from one screen to another into QuickBooks. So this is where the rubber hits the road. We need to build it foundationally and test it through this projected profit and loss. If you're building us or joining us late, you want to download this profit and loss in an accrual basis from last fiscal year. And then we update these numbers, but this is from your chart of accounts. And as we go into QuickBooks, this is online, but desktop is very similar. We're going into the gear icon and we're going into budgeting. Now, if you're going in first, you want to go into reports and we want to go in and pull up your report of your profit and loss. Probably a profit and loss comparison in that accrual basis because we can see the trend from last year and the year before, and what's that growth? What does that look like as far as expense as a percentage? And then we can project off that. So this is my QuickBooks for SimpleGrowth. So I'm not going to jump in and actually show you the financials on here, but those are the places you want to go. And up top, you've got a cash and accrual. A lot of times when it loads, it's kind of hidden. We want to scroll back up and hit it. So we download that, put it into a Google Sheet or Excel sheet, project off it. And once this is dialed in, we're going back into QuickBooks Online or desktop to the upper right-hand corner. Now, if you're on QuickBooks, I believe it's Pro, you need to go to the next level for an extra $20 a month or so to have this budgeting feature show. It doesn't come in the lowest level. Totally worth the extra bucks though. So we're going to go into budgeting. And what you can see here is this is something that I've started to do in both my companies here is I've got a stretch goal and a baseline goal. So the baseline is what we have to hit. And the stretch goal is actually going out the ultimate goal. So maybe we're looking at a minimum, we're going to grow 30%, but our stretch goal is 50%. Your expenses are pretty much going to be the same minus your field labor and maybe some repairs. But basically we're accounting for the extra growth. And now I can toggle between the two budgets in an accrual basis to see where I'm actually at. Believe it or not, my admin updates and reconciles my QuickBooks twice a week. So I know within a day or two, either way I'm at, where I'm going and where I'm at, and I can make course corrections. So what you want to do is once you have this sheet here all dialed in, you're going to that gear icon, budgeting, and then we're going to add a budget. And what it's going to do is pull out this preview with your chart of accounts, and then you would name it, and then you want to go pre-fill data from the actual previous year, and then you can update it so it avoids a lot of the data entry. So the idea is we want to go in and map it on the Excel or Google Sheet, base that on assumptions of historical data pulled out of our CRM, our customer relationship management software. We update the entire budget here, and then we go in and add a budget. And once that budget is in play, you should be able to go to reports and click budget versus actual. And I'm checking that at least on a weekly basis, if not twice a week. Now, one thing without opening up my budget is when you do that, say we're looking at the month of January, you don't want to do the budgeted time up to, say, January 15th, if that's where you're at. You want to open it up, in my opinion, to the whole entire month so you can actually see where you're at. Because sometimes when the numbers come through, if you don't select the whole month, it doesn't give you a whole picture of where you need to go as far as your growth or extra sales. So comments or questions, drop them below. Really, really big thing, in my opinion right now. All service industries, we need to create a budget, create an Excel or Google Sheet, check the math on it, pull this historical data out of your CRM as far as your closing ratios, sales expense per marketing source, your client acquisition cost, and then your client lifetime value, and then what the average ticket cost is. And we back that into the top here where we're projecting our sales and the profit or the in the budget. And then we're driving that all in to the gear icon. We're adding the budget in QuickBooks. We're pulling in last year's numbers and manipulating them up just so there's not a whole bunch of double entry. And by doing so, it's going to just give you a double check on your numbers and your assumptions. If it's really off, it'll throw a red flag. And then once we have it in, we're going to track that on a weekly basis for accountability. Like I said, I'm going to be probably taking 10 or 15 people if I end up doing it, considering it, building out a budget, building out a marketing plan, and weekly accountability where people are submitting their numbers to the group, and we hold you accountable for 12 months. So Callahan's Corner, you ask the questions, we answer them live right here on Facebook.